What's the difference between DIY and pre-made? What is really the pros and cons of both? Let's say that at the very top of this page is your ideal sound. You rarely ever get to see your ideal sound. I probably don't know of a single person who will say that this is 100% the sound that I'm going for, because it's almost impossible to know the exact minor detail of every single frequency and how it should be played out over time. That is something that just is not even practical to worry about. So a lot of the times you see those memes like, oh, the mix is almost there, but it's actually like the mixing engineer dead as a skeleton on the console. That's the same exact idea here. But you can get about 99% there. I think you can get very, very darn close if you approach it with a science. We have our ideal sound. How do we get there? So we got DIY and pre-made. This is just assuming that we have no knowledge and no resources so far. We're just starting at square one. This is a cliche. Time equals money. You usually have money or you have time, but you rarely have both. So that's the trade-off, is if you're gonna do your own sound design, you have to put more time into it as opposed to money, and vice versa. If you want to do pre-made to get to where you want to go, then you're going to be spending more money and less time. Here's the interesting thing. With sample packs, and I'll get into that in a second, DIY sound design, you have to travel all this way, right? I don't know if I can do this with one hand. Now this is going to be the more smooth path, even though my line is like curved as hell, but whatever. There's only about 2 things you need to figure out on the DIY side. But then there's about 3 things you need to figure out on the pre-made side. Whether you start in an init patch or you start with someone else's preset, you have to spend money to get these presets. Let's say you hear a pack that you like and it has that dubstep growl you've always been wanting to use in your songs, but it's not exactly there. It's almost like, let's say 70% there. All right, well now let's say that you're 70% to your ideal sound. You're spending money to get to your almost ideal sound. It's like a template. We're gonna say your pack provides that much accuracy. So you need 2 things still before you pay for that pack to get your sound to that ideal sound. You have to experiment and figure out what about that preset will actually get you to your sound you're wanting. And you also need to know the tool. If you just pick out a preset from like the list view on Serum or like the library view on Massive, let's say, there's only so much you can do with the macros before you actually have to go under the hood and you have to know your tools. That is one path to get to your ideal sound. It's technically faster than DIY up until this point, but then it's a bumpy road thereafter. Now, with DIY, it's literally the same exact thing as this. To recap, this is the smooth path, but it takes more time, and this is the smooth then bumpy path, but it costs more money. And now let me go into more specificity with this, because let's say you have your pack and it gets you 70% there. What if there's a pack that, let's say, gets you only 50% there? And let's say that it's less money. Well, now you have a dilemma. Do you want to get the pack that is cheaper, but then doesn't get you as close to the sound you're going for? Or do you want to go for the pack that's more expensive and gets you closer to where you're going for? This is getting a little bit into economics, right? But our willingness to pay, how much we're willing to pay to get a particular sound, depends on how close it gets us to the sound that we want. For companies, say, like Cymatics or Antidote Audio, a lot of people describe them with, well, they're bringing a lot of quality to their samples. It's not exactly quality. It's actually that they're pinpointing a market of people who really, really want to make similar sounds. And that's not to say that these people don't want to be original. It's that those people find that that's a good shortcut to getting to the sound that they're imagining. Why is this important? Because let's look at what actually is happening right now in the scene. Let's make a timeline of then and now. I'm not really familiar with before Vengeance samples. Let's say that there's like Vengeance and that there's Vandalism. They were both huge titans in the sample and preset industry for EDM for the longest time. They still are. But now people seem to be diverging from them for some reason, and that's because boom, we're in this new age of a cycle of EDM where now the sound designers are really starting to get the producers in the scene once again. And then you have all of a sudden Cymatics. Cymatics comes out of nowhere. I was just kind of a producer, all like you guys, just thinking like, wow, this is cool. They're making samples and presets. Wow, those sound really cool. Those are pretty similar to the stuff I kind of like. And I think that what they've done is really interesting because they just took something that was almost like 60% there and they made it like 70% there or 80% there. I don't mean to say that these are the only companies. Honorable mentions might be Loop Masters, Prime Loops, like you said. And here's someone I want to just separate completely right now is John Lemcool. He is the owner and founder of Plugin Guru. Plugin Guru is interesting. I want to bring up John in a second because he's done something that I was a little bit inspired by, and I want to kind of keep the trend going. I want to bring him up very soon. But so we've got Cymatics here. They are the first movers in a new standard of preset and sample quality. They can set the price of the market. That is why people will pay $127 for their animals pack. And they knew that they could price it high, so that's why they did that. And even that month, in fact, they were announcing that they had made $100K in revenue off of this pack. It's insane. They have set a new standard of quality, and of course the people who are wanting those kinds of sounds, they'll pay this kind of money to get it. I've seen so many people who maybe can't afford it or don't think it's worth the money or whatever say, wow, like that's so ridiculously overpriced. And then so many people got upset about this one pack, or, you know, a slew of perhaps different packs, or maybe it's the marketing that Cymatics has. Maybe people don't agree with that. And because of that, now you see a bunch of other firms entering this market. You've got Antidote Audio. You've got Acolyte. Also, guys, keep in mind, this can change at any time. I'm not saying that Antidote is inferior to Cymatics or Acolyte is inferior to Antidote. I'm just saying at the stage that we're at right now in the history of time, then you even have Synthesource, and I'm not sure where Synthesource stands, so I'm just assuming, you know, I haven't seen them before I saw Acolyte. So this is, again, all could be very biased based on my point of view. You see all these companies coming in, and do you know why that's happening? Right now, it seems like Cymatics is that monopoly. They entered the market first. They have what's called first movers advantage. The idea is that they set a new standard separate from Vengeance and Vandalism that is pushing the quality standard even higher in terms of what they focus on, which is dubstep, future bass, EDM, you know, all the stuff that young kids care about nowadays. Let's just say young music. They first plugged in to the young music market. Now you see Antidote Audio is plugging into the young music market. Now Acolyte is plugging into the young music market. Synthesource is plugging into the new music market. Cymatics may be the first one, but this price can't be the price forever. If there are so many different companies in this new scene, that means that there's going to be more room for diversity, more room for originality, in fact. And it's not so much about having to create your sound from scratch, as it's just finding the right company to get you maybe halfway there and then to get to your ideal sound. There are pros and cons to both of these, and as time goes on and more competition enters the market, you're gonna see this as a more viable path. I really like all of these companies. I think they're all doing something amazing, and that's why they exist in the first place, and people are down to buy their packs and whatnot. And I'm very optimistic for the future of sound design. I think that what you'll start to see happening is you'll see a marketplace where there's a monopoly on the standard, and it's going to start to go flat, 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 and even go lower and lower until finally the sound designers that are doing work on these packs, they'll be getting as much money as they're putting in time-wise for their packs. And once you see that, it'll be easy now to find the packs that you really care about, assuming that all the quality standards of these companies are equal, or they're meeting the sound that you're trying to go for. This is interesting. I really find that this dynamic of what's called a monopolistic competition, this is going to really fold out in the next coming months and into the coming years. It's going to be very, very interesting how this turns out. This is going to be more and more of a viable path. DIY sound design, you may get lost in all the technicalities and the science behind sound and never get to your deadline in time. But maybe this might be, in fact, the better way to get to the sounds you're going for. If you end up having a smoother path, let's say, like I said here, and you can get to here because you know the science and you know your tools to begin with, maybe let's say sample packs will only get you to here, or maybe even here if you don't know anything about synthesis or sound design. It really depends. This is a spectrum, guys. It's not just DIY or pre-made. It's a spectrum. It's where you decide to fit in the scheme of things. Where do you think other companies stand between these two extremes? That's education. Education will be what can help both this and this at these later stages. It's not that you should have one or the other. You should really have a mixture of the two. Always keep learning. People who design your sounds, believe it or not, people who design your sounds are people just like you. They may have a few tricks up their sleeve. They may have been doing this for 20 years, but there are hang-ups and there are pros and cons to what they give you to start off with as a template. Believe it or not, there are professional companies who will make the mistake of leaving DC offsets in their samples. There are companies that will make the mistake of not mapping all the macros in their presets. And it really depends on what kind of quality standard you're going for. I'm not saying that you have to map all the macros as a company, but it is really nice to give them that extra edge if they don't know sound design, but they just want to change the sound a little bit. So it's interesting because these people are just like these people. They may have more expertise, but really you can get to that same level with, say, 1 or 2 years of watching videos and tutorials and learning from these people. And this is where I stand, and this is where Seamless stands, Multiplier, ADSR. There are so many educators in this field that can help both sides of the spectrum. This is really what you should be focusing on the most. And that's why oftentimes people will tell you, if you have a very specific question about something, get a one-on-one tutor, because they can tailor their lessons to you. And I have a bunch of friends who will teach you for as cheap as 20, 30 an hour. My own rate is 50 an hour. It's only that because I, want to spend my time doing other things. But there's Seamless, he's doing, I think, 75 or 100 an hour. The point is that there are people who are willing to educate you and really help you take it to the next level. I think this is something you should really focus on. And these are things that people will always fight about over age-long debates. But really, it's just about managing this middle right here and having a balance. Damn, okay, I almost forgot this. John Lemcool, he's setting a standard that has been around for some time. What he said in one of his videos was very interesting to me. He said that all of his packs, all of his presets will always have macros to all the parameters that you may possibly want. And so I think that's really important. He's actually setting a standard that I very much agree with. I think if you were to buy from a preset company, that's something that you should really look out for. You want to give companies the benefit of the doubt. These are people too, but really look for quality in how the preset is set up. If it's just a loop and you have to go into the actual plugin to change the LFO or the sequence or whatever, well, maybe that's not as versatile of a preset as you might think. There's certain practices that will make a preset more versatile, more universal, as I've been calling it, than making some cool sound and then selling that in a pack. This is all just a quality standard. And speaking of which, I'm going to be starting a product review series, but the idea is to set a new quality standard amongst all presets so people are getting the best bang for their buck. And I'm going to be an independent reviewer of these products. If you guys want to know more in-depth about, on a 5-star rating scale, would I tell you guys that this is a versatile preset that you can really tweak to your liking? This is all stuff that I really want to make accessible to you guys. I'm going to be giving you very frank and objective observations on the sound. I may have some bias here and there, but that's more just something that will not determine the rating that I give the product. I love you guys so much. You guys have a good day. I'll see you soon.